Right, I think it's a very important question in the 21st century, and I think the concept of what I call activist memory is essential. So activist memory means that education about past traumas could be beneficial for supporting and promoting human rights, right? So it's a contested, without any doubt, it's a very contested concept. But the idea here would be that it's possible to talk about traumas going beyond the borders of one's own community, right? So, of course, if we just focus on the suffering of our own community, this community of suffering can be very exclusive, and it can actually be against the norms of social inclusion, right? So I recently was engaged in the project focusing on Roma memory, to give a specific example of what I mean by activist memory. So here the idea was, and many Roma activists and scholars believe that if we were more aware of what happened to the Roma during the Holocaust, right, that knowledge would help to fight anti-Gypsyism, would help to fight extreme discrimination that Roma face in many societies, including the country that I study, Lithuania. So in Lithuania, starting with 2019, there was an increased attention to the Roma genocide. There was commemoration of Roma genocide, and we saw amazing cooperation between Roma and Jewish communities, right? So they kind of transcended the borders of their own communities and tried to cooperate on joint projects, such as fighting anti-Semitism, such as fighting anti-Gypsyism, right? So it's extremely difficult to do that. It's just the beginning. But I personally do believe that there could be such a thing as activist memory when learning about the traumatic experiences of other peoples, of other communities. We kind of start feeling this common vulnerability, human vulnerability. And in that sense of human vulnerability is essential for the promotion of human rights. I think I'll also draw on my own work. I did, with my colleague Erika Resende, we did a project on crises and memory politics. And needless to say, 21st century, there's no shortage of crises that we can tell, right? And specifically, I mean, I myself was very interested in the impact of 2013-2014 crisis in Ukraine and also the current war, right? I mean, this is a real war. This is not just a crisis, right? But at the same time, it could be seen as a critical situation in global politics. So what we found was that whenever there is a critical situation or a crisis in global politics, we also see a change in discourses. We also see change in identities. We also see various actors voicing their memories. So, for example, in the case of Ukraine, 2013-2014, it became very clear and very visible the voices of women, for example. It also the voices of Crimean Tatars and their narrative about genocide. So it was all in a sense related to these major systemic changes that were taking place in Ukraine, right? The democratization, but also occupation of Crimea by Russia, also the outbreak of fighting in eastern Ukraine in 2013-2014. It was all related to memory politics, new discourses, new identities. And it's also true that it was also related to strengthening of fighting and suffering narrative in Lithuania, right? Once the crisis in Ukraine broke out, 2013-2014, memories about anti-Soviet partisans in Lithuania were revived, right? And very true when we're talking about the war of 2022, I think it's not surprising that it's bringing back the memories of World War II. And especially if we're looking at relations between Ukraine and Russia, we see that memory wars and real wars are definitely interrelated, right? So I think, long story short, I think that there are structural reasons why we see the rebirth of memory politics, and no lack of crises, no lack of traumas in the 21st century brings back those memories from the past and produces those new discourses to try to address and understand the current situations.